viewers, my name is Dipayan and this is the new Tata Curvv.ev. Now it's Tata's new electric SUV coupe and we are here in Udaipur to get our first taste of it. Now I'm itching to get behind the wheel and try out what this car is like to drive. But before we hop inside, let me take you around the outside and tell you about the design, the dimensions and features on the outside that you need to know. Now we'll start at the front. Now of course it is recognizable instantly as a Tata because the design language is derivative of the Tata SUV styling, which means that you get this LED DRL that runs along the bonnet and looks pretty set apart. There is this side element with slats along the side in LEDs that look pretty cool. Now this is also a sequential LED, so you get a really cool startup animation when you do startup. There is no grille because obviously it's an EV and it doesn't require the kind of air, but you do have slats for the grille on the bottom of the bumper that will probably be of use in the ICE version and in this version for aerodynamics, but we'll get to that later. The front end otherwise is pretty clean and it sets the tone for the angular design of this SUV coupe, and I think that is something that's going to set it apart in a big way once you look at it in person. You have your headlights mounted in the bumper and of course the fog lamp mounted right underneath it, and I love how compact these units are and they're inside into the bumper and they look really neat and well integrated. Now of course with an SUV coupe the side is where it's at, so let's move to the side and see how it looks in profile. Now when I said an angular design for an SUV coupe, I think that is something that really sets the Curvv apart and that continues along the profile. But we'll start with the wheels. Of course you get 18-inch wheels which are pretty chunky for this segment, and you get them in a 255 section, and of course again that angular theme, these boxed out flared wheel arches look really cool. The roof line, of course, being an SUV coupe, it does slope down, but I like how aggressively it slopes down, creating that really three-box effect on an SUV, and I love that. Of course you get flush door handles which are also aerodynamic elements, as are the 18-inch alloys on the wheel, and of course these flush door handles can be opened like this and it's pretty cool and it's a nice touch. I like these LED lights that indicate that the car is unlocked and can be opened. Now the Curvv is a 4.3 meter long SUV and that is something that you can see in profile, and this makes it Tata's longest electric car to date, but it does have a slightly shorter wheelbase than what we've seen in the segment, so we'll have a chance to tell you about what the space is like once we are on the inside. And then of course we head to the rear. Now switch to the rear section of the Tata Curvv and you're going to really like the way the design has come together. I love the way the Tata have used different colors and different textures to really integrate and create a very cohesive looking rear end. You get this LED DRL that runs across the length of the boot lid as well as into the fender flares, and I think that looks really cool, especially the way it slopes down in a sort of boomerangish angle. You get inset reflectors, and of course the bottom part of the bumper has been blacked out and looks really cool. I also like this fore spoiler here that has these twin shoulder like effects. Now they are aerodynamic elements and they do work to reducing the CD of the car in total, and I think once you look at the rear end you get a sense of why the SUV coupe is going to be such an appealing body form in the years to come for this segment and for the mass market. And I think the Curvv EV has now set the benchmark in the way the rear section of a SUV coupe should look. And now the important thing to remember is that the Curvv is a flagship electric car from Tata, and that means you're going to get a whole lot of special features like this. Gesture control on the boot lid, which is electrically operated and is 500 liters, which means that you can more than easily fit luggage for an entire family for a week's worth and still have space to go. I think the operation is really nice and the gesture was very clean. I think this is an overall win in terms of features as far as the Curvv.ev goes. Hello viewers, and now you're joining me in the cabin of the new Tata Curvv.ev, and the first thing you're going to realize is that this new electric car sets a whole new benchmark for a cabin experience for Tata cars. I mean, this is the best material quality that we've seen in any Tata car ever. Plastics on the dash are really good quality. They're soft touch and they don't really feel really bad to touch. There are great inserts like this silver insert that runs along the length of the dashboard. There's another texture right below that which looks really cool, and of course there's a whole lot of this faux leather in white to match the upholstery. Of course you get blue stitching to indicate that you are in an electric car, and I think in all, in terms of upholstery and the way the cabin has been laid out, the Tata Curvv.ev really does raise the benchmark. But of course, coming to features, at the center of it all, you get this new 12.2-inch infotainment system, which is compatible for Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, and is a really nice, intuitive system to use. The touch is great and it works seamlessly. You also get mood lighting for the first time in a Tata EV. Now, you can either sync it to change with your driving, or you can sync it with the music, or you can set it to the way you like, and that's a really cool customization, especially from inside the cabin. Your AC controls are again all touch, and they're really nice to use. They're not fiddly touch buttons. They are laid out on this piano black finished center console, and it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but aside from that, there is very little to take away from it. Now, one of the features that I really like on the inside of the Tata Curvv, and it shows how much electric cars are maturing over time, is this EV charging cap, which only can be operated when the vehicle is at standstill. Once you put it in drive, the entire button disappears, so you can't even activate it by mistake. And this also means it is an electronically activated cap, which means it cannot be unlocked from the outside, which is something that EV owners have been complaining about for the longest time, that people keep opening their charging caps in traffic and it stays open for the rest of the drive. Now that is something that you cannot do in the Tata Curvv.ev, and it shows that Tata is listening to their customers. Of course, this steering is Tata's new digital steering, which means that you get this backlit display in the center. The steering is really nice to touch, and of course you get a nice flat bottom here, and it is nice to use, although I would have wished for it to be slightly smaller. But that said, that's about it. It is very tactile and very easy to use. The buttons are well laid out. It's got a touchpad as well, but it's not fiddly to use, and that shows just how much Tata has matured in their cabin design over the years. You also get paddle shifters at the back. Of course, these in the Curvv.ev only control the regen, so you can control from level 1 to level 3 modes of regen using these paddle shifters and then back. But that's about all that they do. You do also get 3 driving modes: City, Eco and Sport, which can be activated via this rotary dial. It is also one of those infinite dials like Tata usually does, but it does look a little out of place and a little cheaper than all the other components used in the cabin. Now, you also get ventilated seats on both seats, and for the first time you get a driver's seat that is electronically adjustable, and that is pretty cool. Now though, I'll get to driving before I tell you what it's like in the second row of seats. Now, on this long range variant, of course, you get slightly more power, which means you get 123 kilowatts, which is about 167 bhp and 215 Nm of torque. And right away, you feel that power even when you're driving in city mode. Of course, you get 3 driving modes: Eco, City and Sport, of which obviously Sport is full power of the engine with all the torque, and it is really nice to drive. I mean, Tata has always been known to build cars that are great to drive on any roads, but the Tata Curvv.ev takes that benchmark a little further by being just that much more agile. And I think the suspension is also really well set up. Now, it'll be interesting to see how the EV stacks up against the ICE, because this, again, remember, ICE cars have a lot of weight distribution to contend with, which electric vehicles don't. This has the battery in the flow, which means that the CG is really nice and low, and it makes it really agile in the corners. And of course, when all else fails, you have that 215 Nm of torque right from the get-go, and that makes a quick stab at the throttle enough for you to change the direction. Now, one of the things we did notice though is that the suspension does tend to bottom out when the bumps get slightly sharper, and that might be because this is tuned to be both an EV and an ICE car. So where the EV is going to be a lot heavier, it is going to find some places that it is going to bottom out at because of the sheer weight that it is carrying. But that said, on the go, this is a really nice, comfortable, quiet car to drive. And the best thing is that Tata have now finally integrated a driving sound, which means on the outside, people can hear you coming, which means when you're driving on narrow roads like this, somebody coming around a corner isn't going to be surprised by your EV suddenly appearing around the corner. And that makes a small difference to you, but it makes a massive difference to the way electric vehicles are being perceived. And that is something that shows just how far Tata Motors have come as a manufacturer of electric vehicles. Now, the Tata Curvv is also the debut point for Level 2 ADAS in Tata cars, which means that this new Curvv.ev gets lane keep assist, lane depart assist, and adapt cruise control, all of which are great features to have, especially when you're out on the highway. Now, one of the concerns with designing an SUV coupe that's electric means that you're probably going to have to suffer in the second row, and that was one of the major concerns when it came to the Tata Curvv.ev, because you have the batteries in the flow and of course this sloping roofline. But Tata have been very smart about the way they've laid out the seats. You get stadium seating, which means that the passengers at the back sit slightly higher than the passengers in the front, which means that you can use the space smarter. There is also an armrest in the center, and for reference, my frame is 6'1" and I still have some knee room, and the front seat is set for my position, and there is headroom, albeit not as much as I would have liked. But this is where it gets better. These rear seats are adjustable, which means that at full recline you can get a little more space for your head, and that makes it all that more comfortable. Now, Tata have been very smart about how they've played the space in this second row, and despite having a smaller wheelbase than the other cars in this class, I think the Tata Curvv does a really good job in the second row. Now, of course, in terms of comfort, you do get these two AC vents independent for your second row, as well as a Type-C 45-watt fast charger, and I think that is a very thoughtful feature. Thank you so much for tuning in to AutoToday and our review of the new Tata Curvv.ev. Now, as always, if you like this video, smash that like button because it means so much to us, for our channel and for our growth. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the AutoToday channel, this is your chance to do that now. As for the Tata Curvv.ev, Tata's newest flagship SUV electric, I think it has all the makings of a really great car. This is the most powerful Tata that we've tested. The interiors have come up a full step forward and almost meet the benchmark of the segment. The features are class leading. There are things that set it apart. There's space on the inside. So the Tata Curvv.ev has a lot going for it. And I think, in fact, it's going to cannibalize a little bit of its own market from the Tata Nexon as a great alternative that's not only spacious, but more powerful and has more than enough range for most situations and even some light intercity travel.